2306. Today, I want to do some foundational information about the Texas Constitution, some big, broad concepts that you will need to know to hopefully help you better understand this governing document of the state of Texas. So, when we talk about a constitution, we need to look at what are the functions of a constitution, whether it's a constitution for a state or whether it's a constitution for a nation. It has functions, and they all have the same function. They're worded differently depending on if it's a true democratic system or is it a fake democracy where there's a totalitarian government and they try to tell everybody that they have free elections, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got a written constitution because that proves that we are truly a democracy. Well, not really. But every constitution that really wants to function in a democratic society must have the following things. And I think you can put all of it under one big umbrella, like I've tried to do on this slide, where it's authority. Where does the authority come from? For a country, for a state to say, this is our government. This is our, look at the bullet number 1, this is our rule of law. This is how we are able to do the things that we need to do. And because we have this rule of law, then we will pass laws that deal with all kinds of things. It could be murder, it could be speeding tickets, it could be kidnapping, it could be dumping environmental waste in a river. It could be anything, but we're going to put it in the form of a written law. Now, when you have a written law, what has to come behind that are punishments. Everything that's a law in the state of Texas, code of law, there's a punishment. If you park illegally, you're going to get a ticket. If you speed, you're going to get a ticket. If you rob somebody, you're going to go to jail. And then, but this Constitution is not a rule of law. Look at that second bullet, unless it also offers protections, listen carefully, from the government. Now, we tend to call that, of course, the Bill of Rights. And then lastly, a constitution says, this is how you are a citizen in our country. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And when you're in a state, in the United States, you're automatically a citizen if you follow those criteria I just alluded to. So they're going to say, as far as citizens are concerned, where in the state of Texas do you have to produce a birth certificate or some kind of naturalization papers to show that you are a citizen so you can vote or you can become a police officer or a teacher or whatever the case may be. So rule of law. The second function is the source of power. And the sources of power in this second bullet has to do with the 3 branches of government. And so in most constitutions, there is some form of 3 branches of government. Number 1, legislative branch. Number 2, the executive branch. And number 3, the judicial branch. And inside of those branches, there's going to be, this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do. See, rule of law. The third function of a constitution is to create, look at that word, ultimate source of power. Certain presidents have thought they were the ultimate source. Sometimes the Supreme Court says we're the ultimate source. Sometimes people from Congress go, we're the ultimate source. No. It's called popular sovereignty. Look at that word sovereignty. Right in the middle of sovereignty is R-E-I-G-N, to reign, to rule. And then if you put the sov in front of it, sovereign, that means the ruler. And then you go to popular, which is from the Latin, starting with such words like Publius, the people. The people rule. So that's why the Texas Constitution and the National Constitution both begin with we, the people. Think about that. And then lastly, with all this power and writing laws, in the three branches, you've got to have some kind of a check and balance system. Now, we will go over this in more detail in a later Twitchcast, but for now, I want you to look at bullet number 2 and bullet number 3. The Texas Constitution is all about preventing a concentration of power. Do not let anyone or anything in the Texas government have a concentration of power. And that last bullet, excuse me, write that down, highlight it or something. The Texas Constitution is all about fragmented power. Break it up. Spread it all around. So let's look in general. Remember, this is general. At the Texas Constitution of 1876. Now, I put a little chart here just so you can see that from the time we became an independent nation in 1836, Texas has had 6 constitutions because we've been through all kinds of iterations. We were a republic, then we were annexed and became a state, then we got into the Confederacy in the Civil War, then there was Reconstruction, then there was radical Reconstruction, and finally, in 1876, look what I have out there in the red, this is the current Constitution of the state of Texas. So look at that word reactionary document. When you look at the Texas Constitution, we have to talk about Reconstruction. Now, I don't know what stage of history you're in, or if you've taken history lately, but Reconstruction, as you know, was about a 11-year period after the Civil War. And Reconstruction went through several periods. But in the final time period of Reconstruction, it was radical Reconstruction. And radical Reconstruction was a horrible, horrible event because of the anger that the Northern Republicans had towards the leaders and the slave owners of the Civil War. And so when the radical Reconstruction took over, they are going to ensure that those that they believed had started this Civil War and who had been invested in saving slavery, that they were going to be punished beyond compare. And one of the aspects of radical Reconstruction was the major power brokers who were by the time period, the nature of things, were white males. And so what was happening in radical Reconstruction in the old Confederacy, which is the old South, all of the white power brokers, property owners, leaders were taken out. They lost their citizenship. They lost their businesses. They could not vote. And they were pissed. They were mad. And so when Reconstruction finally ended in 1876, and the leaders of the state of Texas created this last and final constitution, they made a vow that they would never allow a government like they had to have under Reconstruction. You see, under Reconstruction, radical Reconstruction, the power of the government was in the hands of the governor of the state of Texas. He had as much power as the President of the United States. And of course, he was put into office by not the former leaders of the state, the white male property owners. So when they came back into power, when they got the right to vote, and then they were the ones who wrote the Constitution, they vowed that we will never have, listen to my phrase, concentrated power again. We are going to protect property at all cost and private business. Nobody's going to take that away from us. And they are going to make sure that the power is going to be in the hands, look what I said, of the old guard, the white majority population. It was the nature of the beast of the 1870s. It is what was going to happen. But it makes the Constitution of the state of Texas what it is. And we're going to talk about all of that. Remember, these are the broad strokes of the Constitution. The other thing that is interesting about the Texas Constitution is it's called a rigid document. The United States Constitution of 1787 is loose and flexible and can be interpreted. But in the Texas Constitution, they wanted to ensure, those that wrote it said, this thing will not be easily changed. We're going to make sure that if this Constitution is going to be changed, it is going to be very hard to do this. And the only way that we will allow the Constitution to be changed in the state of Texas, no interpretation, ladies and gentlemen, is through adding amendments. And then they took this amendment process. It is long and it's drawn out. But look at bullet number 2. All of the amendments, any changes in the Constitution of the state of Texas has to be voted on by you and me. And there's good things about that, and there's other things that are not so good. And I will be alluding to those as we move through this topic. So everything, for example, all street signs must be yellow. Let's say that's a law. Now, you can't decide, well, yellow gets really hard to see in bright sun and blah, blah, blah. Let's make them red. No. There has to be an amendment that says that all street signs will now be changed to a red color. Then you and I have to go vote on it. I mean, that's how detailed it is. And so what happens is the Texas Constitution is detailed to absurdity. If it's not written in the Constitution, it ain't done. It's not done. So what happens there is look at that last bullet. So what happens is if there's a crisis, if something bad happens, you will find Texas government reacting. There's no pre-planning for some things. It's like, oops, oh my God, we've got to deal with this. What are we going to do? And then you're going to find out when you put some of the budget stuff in there, it's really amazing that we get much done at all when you start learning more and more. So look at that last bullet. Texas government often finds itself reacting to a crisis due to lack of interpretation and the ability to change without amendments. That's something that's very important for you to think about as we go through this and look at the Texas Constitution, these broad terms, the reasons why some of the things that you're going to study about were done. So I want to thank you for listening to me this day, and I hope you're having a good day doing whatever it is you're doing besides listening to this fascinating Twitchcast. Have a good one, y'all. Bye.